My glasses reflect with this light shining directly on me, don't they? That's not good. Look at that.
Yeah, they do a bit. That's true, depending on where you look.
It's because I'm just going to go without. That's better. Yeah. Nice.
Okay, Rick, ready to go?
I'm ready.
Going to be fun.
Have fun.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this grand premiere of the Rick Steves Europe 2025 Travel Festival. Tonight, we're going to travel both across the globe and back in time to relive one of Rick's most memorable journeys. My name is Ben Green, and I will moderate tonight's presentation. Behind the scenes, helping answer questions in the Q&A and posting a list of links in the chat are my wonderful travel-savvy colleagues, Wendy Clark and Rich Earl. Thank you so much, Wendy and Rich. As part of this festival series, every evening we will have a giveaway contest. Tonight, you can enter to win a free copy of Rick's forthcoming book, On the Hippie Trail. There'll be a link to do this and sign up in the chat. Now, I'll just mention briefly that unfortunately, due to local laws, residents of Canada, Puerto Rico, Florida, Rhode Island, and New York are unable to participate. Please sign up between now and 6:30 p.m. Pacific time for a chance to win, and we will announce the winner later this evening. If you're interested in learning more about Rick Steves Europe Tours, we will have a Tours 101 information session on February 6th. We'd love to have you join us there, and the link to register for this is in the chat as well. Now, finally, as part of this festival, every evening through Thursday this week and then Monday through Thursday next week, we will have a travel presentation, but the trips don't stop there. We invite all of you to join us every Monday on Monday Night Travel for more virtual traveling. You can sign up at ricksteves.com now for Mondays through mid-February on diverse topics such as travel planning with the Monday Night Travel Team with yours truly, family history research in Europe, the French Riviera, and more. So we certainly look forward to seeing some of you there. Now, please join me in welcoming a lifelong traveler and a traveler ready to share a trip of a lifetime with all of us, Rick Steves. Happy 2025 festival, Rick.
Hey, Ben, it's great to be kicking off our festival with this chance to have a little nostalgia, go back to the 1970s and travel on the Hippie Trail. So I'm just kind of excited because I've been with the same publisher right from the start, and I've never seen them so excited about a new book of ours as this book on the Hippie Trail. So they've got me going off on a national book tour here starting in a week or two, and we're going to be just celebrating this opportunity to kind of relive the ultimate vagabond trip on the planet, I would say, in the 1970s and the 60s. And that is this iconic trip from Istanbul to Kathmandu. And for some reason, this is years before I was ever a travel writer. I didn't write my first travel book until 1980. So this was 78. And I filled up this empty book like that as a as a 23-year-old, and I never read it until the pandemic hit and I had some time on my hands. And each page of this 200 and some page book it's 60,000 words. And I read it and I thought, wow, this is actually a treasure because you can't do this trip physically anymore. And I had gorgeous photographs that I happened to have taken along the way with my buddy Gene Openshaw. Ben, we've got a little 90-second sizzle reel or trailer about this book. Could you roll that just so we can see what my publisher is all excited about sharing? Hey, I'm Rick Steves, and I'm here to talk about my new book, On the Hippie Trail. Back in 1978, when I was just 23, I traveled from Istanbul to Kathmandu with my best friend Gene. It was quite an adventure for a couple of kids just out of college. There was no way of connecting with loved ones. We didn't know where the end of our trail was. There were no guidebooks. For us, it was a venture into uncharted territory. It was a journey of discovery to question our Western values and help us better understand the world. Along the way, we made friends in Tehran, got lost in Lahore, got high for the first time in Herat, battled leeches in Pokhara, and much more. We were free and earnest, but the trip helped us build a better empathy for cultures and humility for seeing what a small speck we were in this world. Almost 50 years later, I still pack along that curiosity whenever and wherever I travel. What drove me to write a 60,000-word journal along the way is beyond me. But with that journal as a basis for this book, you're invited to join me on what was far and away the trip of my life. All right. Hey, well, I think we're ready to just dive in. I do want to thank you all for joining us and remind you that every Monday we are thrilled to host this little travelers party. And we've been doing it since the beginning of the pandemic. And now we're just doing it because it's a lot of fun. We've got a wonderful traveling family. We got a lot of travels coming up your way. And right now, you're going to join me. We're going to go back to 1978. And we're going to go on the Hippie Trail. I was just out of college, so was Gene, and we didn't have much information back then. All we had was this map that we bought that showed us the main road from Istanbul to Kathmandu, and it was an amazing odyssey. You know, there was something about being young back then, not really wanting to escape, wanting total freedom, wanting not to know where you're going to sleep tonight, but just to be thinking every morning's a new day and kind of wanting to be poor and in the streets and away from home. behind the dark side of the moon in a lot of ways, but at the same time in an amazing new culture and falling in love with parts of the world that you never even knew existed. So this was a wonderland, and when we set off from Istanbul, we were keenly aware that we were getting away from our comfort zone in Europe. And we knew once we left Istanbul, you could keep going in that direction east until you got to my little home here in Seattle, and I wouldn't know a single soul. Nobody knew me, and I didn't know anybody. And we were going halfway there to get to Kathmandu, which was the Shangri-La. It was the end of the rainbow for all the hippie travelers back then. So going through Europe, it was just Yugoslavia back in the day, and that was actually a great part of the trip, was getting through Yugoslavia and visiting with friends in Bulgaria. And that's where the journal started getting interesting. But it really officially picks up in Istanbul. And Istanbul is where East meets West. It's literally where Asia meets Europe. And it's a very historic city. It's a Muslim city. It's a city that is just ramshackle and hard to predict. And you just get lost in the streets of Istanbul. And well, let me just read to you. I've pulled out a couple of bits from the journal. And you can almost turn to any page in this journal and read a little snatch of it. But in Istanbul, we wanted to go to a hammam, a traditional massage in an old-fashioned bathhouse. We had to leave everything, including our money belts, in the little booth. Feeling really naked and wrapped only with a towel, we were led into a steamy world. My unshaven Turk said, "Okay, merhaba," and put me belly up on the big round marble slab. Then, with a loud slap on my chest, he landed on me, and like a beast, he worked me over good. Sitting there under those Ottoman domes with the sun rays slashing in, and not knowing if we were going to get broken or whether we were just going to get so beautifully massaged that our lives would never be the same. That was the kind of experiences we were having. I had my Pentax K1000. That was the trusty basic camera of the day. And, you didn't know, it wasn't like today where you snap a shot of everything. We had 36 shots in a canister in one roll. We had, I don't know, 12 or 15 rolls of film. We knew we had like 8 or 10 shots a day. So you had to be really careful what you took. And then you didn't know what you had until you got home. You were just hoping and praying your camera was working well. I was just fascinated with the fact that the camera worked and the photographs survived. These few shots here are not old. These are new shots. But this is the pudding shop here. That was the iconic cafe where all the beatniks and hippies and poets and vagabonds would meet. They had a bulletin board there. There was no forums on the internet. There was no crowdsourcing. There were no real guidebooks to this. There was just a bunch of people heading to hippie paradise, Goa, Kathmandu, Sri Lanka, and so on. So we head off. And the first leg of the trip was from Istanbul to Tehran, the capital of Iran. And it was a 3-day bus ride. And, I was just rereading the bit about that. And we always had to do our adulting, get our visa for the next country, get our tickets to get out of town, and so on. We bought our tickets to this bus, and we had, seats number, 16 and 17. And we thought, great, we're all set. And everybody stampeded to get on the bus. And we thought, what are these people doing? We're in 16 and 17. But then we got on the bus and we realized seat numbers didn't matter. So we were the last people on the bus, so we got the little seats put on as an afterthought over the stairwell in the back of the bus. The only seats out of 50 on that bus that didn't recline. And we realized this is going to be an even longer ride. The ride itself was an odyssey. The pirate did not like me. That's our nickname for the driver. You can see him looking at me right there. Every time I stood up to stretch, he would see me in the mirror and he'd say, "Mister, sit down." And he was quite a character. And to write about him in the book, I don't have time tonight, but it was really sort of introduced us to this whole hippie trail. This bus, it's in the middle of the first night, got in an accident, sparks flying, people screaming. And luckily nobody was hurt, but it cost us the better part of a day. And it was just a reminder that this was going to be an odyssey. It was not going to be a smooth, schedulable trip, that's for sure. So we did manage to get it off of the the side there and get it to a mechanic's place that could fix things up. And then we were on the way. But at this point, the pirate figured, well, we're not going to get there on time anyway. So we just lost any sense of need to keep on going, and the trip became longer. And we would spend nights in hotels instead of sleeping on the bus. And these are some of the hippie trail travelers that were on the bus with us. But there was a small corridor that all the hippie travelers would go, and you'd see each other. We'd see these same people all the way into Delhi or to Srinagar in Kashmir or in Amritsar and Punjab. It's just you'd see the same Westerners over and over along this skinny trail that took us all from Istanbul to Kathmandu. Iran was, it was interesting to be in Iran because you'd go to the markets and you'd see all the portraits of the Shah hanging there, but I had a sense that he was about to crash. There was unease. Everybody was uptight. The police were everywhere. I was not political at all at this time, but I knew something was happening. And the Shah was the dictator, but he was about to fall, and the Ayatollah Khomeini was about to come in. As a matter of fact, we did this tour in 1978. That's the last year that you could do this trip, because in 79 the Shah had fallen. Iran was an Islamic Revolution society, couldn't get through as tourists, and the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. So we didn't know it, but this was the last year you could do this trip, and we were lucky to get it done. I looked at the people. My memory of the Iranians was rambunctious, humor, good sense of humor, very curious and friendly. And these were the same faces that, a year later were shaking their fist at the camera and saying "Death to America," which, by the way, was a big media stunt. Those people were paid and bussed in to shake their fist at the camera and say "Death to America." But it was a society in turmoil as they were getting rid of one dictator and welcoming in theocracy and another dictator. It was just every day, you just go to the next city, you don't have any guidebooks. When I was on the bus, I gained an appreciation for the value of guidebooks. Maybe that's where I became such a junkie for guidebooks. I did this trip without any information, and well, almost any information. And there's little staple-bound publications available in different languages. I would spend bus rides literally going through the bus and scavenging information from other travelers. As I remember when I was planning this trip, I went to a class about the Hippie Trail at the University of Washington in the free college there, just an evening fun class, And I remember the guy had done it, and he sat there and he had 20 students, kids like me and Jean, looking at him for information. He had the experience, but he didn't take our needs seriously. He didn't care to share what he learned, and it was a wasted experience and a lost opportunity. And I remember being very frustrated at that, thinking this is not right. When somebody has travel information, they can organize it and they can share it, and other people can benefit hugely from it. And I think at that point, that was planting seeds for me to be as passionate as I am about making travel information helpful for others. We got to the border of Afghanistan. And this is probably the most godforsaken place I can remember ever being. It's a no man's land between two no man's countries almost, Iran and Afghanistan. And coming up to this, we thought, okay, here we go. We measured our distance to Kathmandu by how many borders do we still have to cross. The vast space between borders was just kind of time consuming. It was the borders that were scary and exciting, thrilling, and that we got up all set up for, because you didn't know what kind of antics you were in for at the border. At this particular border, and I write about it in the book, there was VW buses by other hippies that were just confiscated and torn apart as the customs people were looking for drugs. There was a museum here, actually, with dusty old glass cases showing pictures of people who had been arrested for smuggling drugs, where they tried to hide something, what they were trying to hide, and where they're doing time in prison. It was the dusty little museum. And for years, I thought, is this a figment of my imagination, or was that actually there? And just last night, in preparation for tonight's talk, I watched a French-made movie about the hippie trail. It's called Hit the Road, and you'll have a link to it in your email tomorrow, and it's on the links tonight in the chat. But they told stories about this same border and those same dusty, glassy cases and the same strange feeling to look at other travelers who were in jail because they tried to slip something across the border. And it made everybody very nervous at borders. In fact, we would check our bags before we reached the border, and then we'd keep our bags on our lap, ideally, so that nobody could put some drugs in there, so that the rich Westerner wouldn't be framed and have to bribe them way out or go to jail. But it was kind of scary stuff. When we changed money, we didn't know if we were going to get this year's currency or last year's currency. Many travelers changed money, and all they got was worthless last year's currency. Now would they know what the color of the currency is this year in Afghanistan? Oh, baby. There was no safety net. There was no safety net. And we got to one point and we kept thinking, we could turn around and be in the Greek Isles and just relaxing and having a good time and partying, or we could continue going on the hippie trail. And we had to keep going on the hippie trail. I don't know, but we finally reached a point of no return. And we thought it's easier to get to India now than to go back to Europe. And India was like home, and we had never been there before. So at the border, people all emptied out and got checked. All their stuff got checked. And then on our way. Now we're taking little buses like this on to the first town in Afghanistan, Herat. I love Herat. On the way, you'd have a rest stop and some guy would be skinning a goat. And, you just kind of go, well, that's Afghanistan. And then you're looking over again and you see the bus driver passing around a big pipe and everybody's getting really high on hashish. And you kind of go, well, that's Afghanistan. And then the glassy-eyed bus driver gets back on your bus and we kind of go, here we go. Let's hope for the best. And then half an hour later, they stop the bus and they bring out a big knife and they say, the price for the ticket has just increased. Does anybody object? Okay, we'll pay what you want. This was the hippie trail. We got into Herat. And Herat is just an amazing place. I made it sound worse than it was just then when I was talking about that, but that was that one little episode coming into Afghanistan. Herat was wonderful. Let me read to you just a paragraph out of this book. I could just turn to any page of this and just read a paragraph and it would be, to me, it's just vivid. And I got to say, that's what I'm so thankful that with my publisher, we've taken that whole journal and put it into readable text. But you got the same border experience right there. But Herat, let me just read that. We decided we need the nicest hotel in town. So we stayed in the hotel where they have the wedding parties. Leaving the wedding party, as things started to die down, we took a nighttime walk. Mingling was a bit intensified. I didn't know if it was because of the hashish or because I was in a very good mood, but I was tickled by little things, like a man weighing tomatoes. Hustlers became playful. The sun had gone down and lanterns came on. Chariots with torches charged through the darkness. Herat is small, but it really doesn't matter because no street is ever the same if you walk through it a second or third time. That captures it. And it's so weird for me to read this because I was 23 years old then. I was a piano teacher. I wanted to be a piano teacher all my life. My girlfriend was a piano teacher. We both owned a grand piano. We were going to nestle them together as grand pianos can do. And we were going to live happily ever after teaching our kids to play the piano. And this trip kind of stoked my wanderlust and my joy of sharing it. And the last words of the book, I believe, are something like, I went home, gave away my piano students, and started a small travel business. This was it. This was the turning point. But when we walk through a place like Herat, every 5 meters or whatever, there was a new little shop. I mean, everything was exactly the same distance. When you have a shop, I don't know, it was like 15 feet or 20 feet or something. And then another 20 feet, you've got another shop and another shop. And you can walk and you can see people and you can clown around with people and you can see the wind blowing through their beards. A guy wants to show you how he ties his turban. Watch me, watch me. There we go. Very good. the way the lanterns shined on people's faces, the kids sitting on doorsteps, giggling and laughing, playful. And then you see the artisans, you see people working in a beautiful kind of simple lifestyle. I don't want to romanticize poverty, but it's thought-provoking to see a less aggressive society. Somebody, this is what he does. This is what God put him on the world to do. He's proud of it. Look at that portrait. And this man pounds on iron all day long. This man will make you something very nice. I realized we're going to be immersed in the culture for a long time, and there's a reason people dress the way they do. So I bought myself a set of clothes that are just like the guy in the street, and it was very comfortable. We went on bicycles whenever we could. And you had to be an extrovert. One thing I've learned is if your trip's not going interesting, it's your own problem. You got to get out and meet people. If you see a guy mowing his lawn with 2 oxen and a thrasher, ask him if you can do it a few times. Give me a couple of, revolutions here. And those kind of experiences were everywhere we looked on the Hippie Trail. We had a refuge. It was our hotel. When we had a hotel, we wanted a nice hotel where the beggars would stay out, where we could leave our gear safely, where we could know that the food was cooked and could be safe. And then we'd get back out into the intensity of it all. There's one paved road through Afghanistan, if I remember correctly back then. And the bus company was Qadari. And I remember it was a long way from Herat, the main city on the west, to Kabul, the main city on the east. It's a long, long day on the road. And this is a great bus ride. And we'd stop for prayer, in Muslim country, of course. So you'd stop when it was time to pray, and everybody would get out and put down their prayer mats and face Mecca. And you'd have to stop for a toilet stop. Of course, there's no toilets out there. There's no gas station with a minibar. You stop in the middle of nowhere. The men would go on this side. The women would go on that side. And I remember looking at the women, and it reminded me of a life-size chessboard of people that all looked like bishops and horses and kings and queens. And the women would have their big, big dresses that were served as a privacy tent. And they would all squat and do what they needed to do. But there could be 20 women at the same time squatting in one stretch of hardpan while the men were on the other side taking a pee. And then 10 minutes later, everybody's back in the bus and you carry on. For hours, kids would just stare at me. And I stared at them. It was beautiful. Maybe that drilled into me the humanity of this planet. Because now every time I encounter some story in our politics, and the knee-jerk reaction for America is, what's good for us? I just think, no, what's good for the world? It occurred to me the other day, when you come back from a trip like this, you've got dual citizenship. You're thankful for your American citizenship, and you've got a global citizenship. And that can be a burden psychologically and emotionally, or it can be a blessing. As I like to say, Thomas Jefferson said, travel makes a person wiser if less happy. It's a burden to understand the humanity of the planet, but it's something that's also a blessing and something that you want. Right now in the news, there's this thing about visas. And, our president-elect doesn't want to let people come here and get an education and then go back home. Why would you ever do that? They should come here, get an education, and stay here. And that's the only way we'll give them a visa is if they stay here. I don't even think like that. I think it's great if they can come here, and I don't want them to stay here because we don't need another brain as much as their developing nation country does back home. You think of brain drains in countries like Turkey and Afghanistan and Nepal. And we've got all the smart, wealthy, big business, corporate people, but these brains should go back home and help their own countries if they're willing and interested in doing that. I don't know, it's an example of how you become a global citizen. It's not saintly, it's enlightened. That's a consequence of travel. In fact, when people tell me have a safe trip, sometimes I'm thinking, have a safe trip. Don't disturb your understanding of what really makes, what is really important. Make America great again, you know? You don't want to mess that up because when you travel, you might realize, yeah, we're great. I love who we are, and we could help the rest of the world be great also. The irony is that's better for business. It's better for stability. It's better for peace. It's better for our children. It's better for everything. Instead of we make it better at the expense of them. Sorry. But I just get in this mood when I consider the humanity of this amazing planet that we share. This girl stared at me the whole day. Her mom stared at me too, behind that grill. I wonder about her. 1978, I don't know, was she 10 years old or something? 68. So she'd be 60 years old now. A 60-year-old woman in Afghanistan. We know the state of women in Afghanistan right now. This woman, this young girl has lived it, assuming she's still alive. Kabul. My main takeaway of Kabul in 1978 was this country is not an urban country. It's not an urban culture. It's not an urban society, but it needs one big city to have a government and an infrastructure and a way to relate to other countries in an aggressive world. So Kabul is the urban obligation of Istanbul. But I remember looking at people in Kabul thinking they don't belong in modern Western clothing. They should have their traditional clothing on. They just didn't seem to know how to wear it quite right. It was the strangest thing. But I just thought Afghanistan is not an urban society. And they've got one big urban mess, and it's called Kabul. Khyber Pass, baby. This is what everybody dreams of. Khyber Pass, everybody who likes to travel. And I had always dreamed of Khyber Pass. And this is where we leave the arid Arab world and we enter the Indian subcontinent. No more dry, dusty, brown, burned off fields. From now on out, it's monsoon lushness. Let me read to you just a paragraph of the Khyber Pass, because we got to the Khyber Pass and, well, I'll just read it, but this is leaving Afghanistan over the Khyber Pass. Crossing the Khyber Pass has long been my dream, and this morning we would do it. We swallowed our malaria pills with black tea and toast and packed into our kinky, old, brightly but badly painted bus to Pakistan. Our seats were big and high with open windows that let me lean out. Except for a little smear of yesterday's vomit still dried to the outside of the bus below my window, this was exactly the way I wanted to do the Khyber Pass. I can still remember how cool it was that the window, which dropped down for some reason, let me lean my whole body out in the air, and it just blew. The world blew in my face as we drove over Khyber Pass. We had to get across the border first, and everybody's trying to sell us drugs. You know, if you're a rich Westerner, you attract con artists. That's just it. You know, everybody's not getting sold that stuff. But if you're one of these rare, wealthy, stupid Westerners that's coming through buying yesterday's currency, maybe you'll buy some fake drugs, or maybe we can put something in your bag and get you caught, and then you have to bribe your way out from the police. Who knows what? But each border came with that kind of kaleidoscope of risk. Now, going over the Khyber Pass and coming into this mountainous tribal area of Pakistan, I was not political at all back then, but I had a sense that this was ungovernable. And I learned later that this is called the autonomous territories, something like that. And these guys with their wind-tattered flags and their rocky fortresses overlooking the one road in the area, like medieval castles in Germany on the Rhine, you know, taxing and dutying anything that goes by and charging fees for safe passage. We had to pay fees for safe passage. They said, okay, it's $2 for fees for safe passage. Who's going to say, no, I think I'll have not a safe passage and keep the $2. This was the Taliban 50 years ago, 40 years ago. These are the guys. These proud tribal people in the mountains between Afghanistan and Pakistan. People, everybody at every town, not everybody, but people had, you can see a guy with a rifle slung over his shoulder. Here you got giant ice cubes being purchased. Merchants and farmers coming and sharing their prices and their goods just like they did in medieval Europe. Peshawar. Then we got to the border of India. And it was so cool coming to India. I had always dreamed of going to India. When I was in school a couple of years before this, or just a couple of months before this, at the University of Washington, we had an opportunity to design your own class. And you had to design your class and find a professor that would take you on. Then you had a private professor to coach you through this one field of study. I designed a class, a 5-credit class called Village India. I just really was fascinated by the village culture in India. And I wanted to go to India. And here we are at the border, as far away from home as I've ever been. My parents had no idea where we were. With my beautiful bag. Look at that bag. Huh? Here's my bag. The same one I had on my back there. I love this bag. It's got all sorts of stitching by people and tailors in hardscrabble little corners. And it's got my youth hostel pass, or my youth hostel emblem, I think there's a Norwegian flag on here somewhere. I don't see it right now, but the American flag. Oh, here's my Norwegian flag. And but coming to this border, I felt like I was coming home, like I was home. I don't know why, but it was coming home. I'll read to you. Let's see. Well, oh God, there's so much I could read, but I just want to remind you, it's all in the book. The book is available for pre-sale now. You can get it wherever you get your books. And then it'll be sent to you as soon as they become available. But I believe in early February, the book is going to be in the bookstores. And we'll have a link to it if you want to pre-order it ahead of time. But I think it's a fun read. As I mentioned, my publisher is sending me on a road trip around the country. I'll be in New York. I'll be at the Writers Festival in Rancho Mirage, California, Palm Springs, I think. I'll be in LA, God willing. I hope they're okay. Minneapolis, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Columbus, more Los Angeles, Bellingham, Seattle, Town Hall in Seattle, Third Place Books in Seattle, San Rafael, Santa Cruz, and Boise. Interesting grab bag of cities there, but I'll be giving a talk similar to this in each of these cities. And if you'd like to drop in, the ticket includes the book. And you'll get a link to this in the email that you get tomorrow, following up every Monday Night Travel. But I'm excited to get out and talk about this trip. As Ben mentioned earlier, everybody, this is just kicking off our 2025 Travel Festival. You can see here today on the Hippie Trail. Tomorrow, and we got great people. I'm not doing any of these. Tomorrow I'm doing a talk, and then I'm doing it next Thursday. But all the other ones are by our guides and our amazing staff. Tomorrow I'm giving my basic skills and philosophy of European travel. If you haven't had that talk yet, I really enjoy sharing that information. And it's as much skills as it is philosophy, or much philosophy as it is skills. On Wednesday, right here, just sign up like you did there. You've got 2025 travel trends and challenges. Thursday, Europe's top 10 second cities. And this is something I've been talking about for a long time. It's crowded in Europe, and we all want to go to the same places. And the first cities are great. I love them. But there are second cities. Instead of hanging out in Edinburgh, you can see Edinburgh and hang out in Glasgow. Instead of hanging out in Lisbon, see Lisbon and hang out in Porto. Of course, you're going to go to Paris, but don't miss Lyon. Dublin's wonderful, but don't miss Belfast. You got to love Seattle, but don't miss Tacoma. You know, there's all these emerging cities that are a little rough edge, little industrial cities that weren't sexy on the tourist must-see list, but now they've got the street art, they've got the edgy, creative food spots, they've just got no tourist crowds, and they got a warm welcome. So Europe's top 10 second cities will be Thursday. Inauguration Day special, travel, European travel in the age of Trump. Next day, Village Europe. Next day, Italy, this and that. And then next Thursday on the 23rd, I'm going to be giving a talk that is entitled Rick Steves Europe Tours. How and why are they so dang good? Hate to be immodest, but my name are on these tours and they have to be good. We are so blessed with the most wonderful tour guides and a huge support staff here and a massive network of hotels and restaurateurs and local guides. And we have a passion for making sure that our our tours offer maximum travel experience and thrills per mile, minute, and dollar. My staff just told me that a couple days ago we cracked the 30,000 traveler mark for tours this year. So we are probably 90% sold out for tours in 2025, but of course we'll be opening up tours for 2026 shortly. But I'm just very proud of our tours. And I thought I would take an opportunity on January 23rd, right here, to gather some photographs together and give you a candid behind the scenes look at what makes our tours special. And I was working on this slideshow just the other day, and I'm thinking, I don't want it to sound like a big ad. People are already sold on our tours. I want to give an appreciation of what distinguishes a good tour. And people, whether they're taking our tours or not, they can learn from that and be inspired by it and have better trips on their own, whether they're taking somebody's tour or whether they're going on their own. So I hope you can enjoy any of those. They're all free. They're all fun. And as Ben said, every night there's a giveaway. Okay, we are at the border. By the way, I've got my little Turkish chai. Don't you love the hourglass chai glass there? Look at that. I love it. That's a cool souvenir. Very nice souvenir to take home. And it's just a nice memory. I always like to have a glass of chai when I'm on the road in this part of Europe or in this part of the world. Okay, we're at the border of India. Here we go. Man, oh man. It's like, I wish I could get into this 23-year-old's head right now. It was one of the highlights of my life to cross the border at that age. My good buddy Gene Openshaw, my best friend from high school, he's the guy that went with me to Europe the day after we graduated from high school when we were 18. And then 5 years later, we were 23, done with college. We do the same thing. First, we did Europe, the whirlwind trip of Europe in 10 weeks. And then we did the Hippie Trail. And Gene's been with me ever since, co-authoring wonderful books. Gene's brilliant. Anytime we do something that's really thoughtful with art and history and so on, Gene's right there with me. So the gateway to India is a state or a province called the Punjab. And this is where the Sikhs live. It's a beautiful religion to get to know. And their Mecca, their Jerusalem, is Amritsar. And there's a place called the Golden Temple there. And I've never been so welcomed at a beautiful, very, very sacred and holy place in a religion than at the Sikhs' Golden Temple. Part of their religion is to welcome guests from far away. From there, we headed north. And it was so exciting to give ourselves a little vacation from the intensity of the road, and we got that in Kashmir. I'll never forget coming through a tunnel with Gene, and in front of us sprawled this lush mountain Himalayan kingdom. And there was a sign on the road that says, "You've just entered Kashmir. Welcome to paradise." And it was like that. It was just gorgeous. Sadly, Kashmir has a Muslim population, if I understand it correctly, with a Hindu government. And there's a civil war going on. It's been going on for decades. And it's a war-torn part of the world. And for many years, there was no travel there. We were there when it was peaceful and nice. But it was Muslim, but with a Hindu Indian government overlay. And it was just a complicated world. I was just reading that tourism is coming back in the last few years, and it is open to tourism. But when you get to the big city up there, Srinagar, you're met by a boy who's sort of like he's sort of like a taxi or a taxi service, a shuttle service. And if you're a tourist, he'll take you around and you can look for houseboats. The thing to do is to rent a houseboat. And we shopped around and we found Muzaffar. They had two houseboats. Muzaffar was the main one. The little one next to it was called the Yellow Submarine. I don't want a houseboat called the Yellow Submarine. I'm sorry. But it was vacant. We stopped there and we decided we're gonna splash out here and live well. And we were we were high on the hog here. This was decadent. These houseboats were built to house the big shot bureaucrats and so on from when India was ruled by Britain. And it was just a wonderful way to escape the heat of India and the intensity of India. You go up into the mountains and stay in Kashmir, and you stay in a houseboat. And here was Vacation City, baby. It was just, we didn't want to have any intense schedule. We just, we just enjoyed being in Kashmir. Climb up on the rooftop, look out, and you see gorgeous boats just floating by like this. I mean, that is like a painting. And that was nothing special. It was always that way from the rooftop of your houseboat. You just watch people going to the market. Gorgeous people. Gorgeous light, gorgeous air. And then we wanted to get one step away from everything. So we took a bus up to a place called Gulmarg. Oh man, Gulmarg. And we stopped and we were just barraged by pony men. And these guys all had donkeys or ponies that they wanted to rent because they wanted us to go on a horse ride. And we did. And we made friends with a guy and rented a couple of horses. And then we went high up into the hills. And I'll never forget coming upon in a meadow a home with a family. And I swear these people were off the grid. They didn't hardly know how to respond when we got there. And they invited us in, and we had one of those unforgettable encounters. And we didn't have a word in common. But there was something magical about just sitting there with that family. Ha! And then writing about it. Okay, we're back on the tourist trail. We flew back to India, and in Agra, we can go to the Taj Mahal and insensitively stand in the fountain to get our portrait taken. I do like that photograph, I gotta say. Delhi is the government of the biggest democracy on the planet. I remember when I was there, I'm kind of a news junkie. Actually, I might be getting this mixed up with a later trip to India when I was older, but I remember I love news, but I'm sensitive. Yeah, I must have been older because I wasn't that sensitive when I was 23. But I thought my whole world is shaped by Western news, American news. When I'm in India, the cool thing about India is it's as big and diverse as Europe, and it has one common language, and that's English. So I thought, and they have a Time magazine, Indian Time magazine, Indian Newsweek magazine, and I don't even think they're the same company. They just took the name and the design, but it's just the same thing in English, but it's Indian oriented, Indian centric instead of Western centric or American centric. And I just made a pact with myself. You'll only read Indian news. You'll get into the Indian political scene. And it was a very instructive time because it's the only time in my life when United States of America has not been the hub. Because, of course, there's a billion citizens in the democracy called India, and they have their own turmoil like we have politically, but we don't read about it because we're so ethnocentric in our news coverage. So it's a great opportunity when you go to India to make a point not to be ethnocentric as much as you can. But when you do get exhausted and overwhelmed by the heat and the intensity and the animals and the elephant poop in the street and the noise, you go to the movie. You go to the cinema. It costs $1. You go in there and you've got this amazing Indian cinematique. And I don't speak the language there for their movies, but you don't need to because the plots were so melodramatic. You just knew what was going on. And they're so romantic and they're so sweet. And they're so fun, and it's such a wonderful air-conditioned break from the intensity of the streets. There is this leftover heritage of the British imperial overlords and the Maharajas and all of this kind of upper class stuff. And but it's sort of an impoverished nobility, it seems. And this was a Maharaja, and it was a big squabble, a big rustle in everybody's being as the Maharaja approaches. Oh, the Maharaja's coming. And then He gets into his old dilapidated car and drives away. But it was much ado about two-bit Maharaja, and we wanted to stay in a Maharaja's palace. And as Western travelers, even backpacker, hippie, hobo, street urchins like us, we had enough money to stay in a Maharaja's palace. It was so humid, it was so lush, it was so full of labor just waiting to help you out, with your rickshaw man parked there all day long in case you needed him, with 4 or 5 people standing around while you eat your breakfast to shoo away any fly that might land on your French toast. And it was quite an experience to be just two of us, guests in a Maharaja's palace. And it was also quite an experience to be introduced to Hinduism and go to these temples and learn about it and respect it as best we could. What a trip. India is my favorite country. People ask me, what's your favorite country? They expect me to say France or Germany or Italy or something like that. In Europe, my favorite country, Italy. In the world, India. Why? Because I'm thinking about why do I like India so much? And by India, I mean the Indian subcontinent. Nepal, Sri Lanka, Kashmir, India. And I bet if I had been to Bhutan and some of those other countries north of Bangladesh, I would have included them, but I haven't been there. But what is it about India? India rearranges my cultural furniture. India wallops my ethnocentrism. India humbles me. When you go to India as a beginner, all of a sudden religion is different. Music is different. Pain is different. Time is different. Everything is different. Think about our treatment of time. For us, time is, it's got value. It's like money. We even talk about it like money. Time, we spend it, we earn it, we waste it, we invest it. That's time in America. India has no concept of spending, wasting, earning, investing time. Time is like bubble gum. You just play with it and you blow bubbles. There's no value of time because you got all the time in the world, as far as I can understand. But I'm trying to figure it out as a Westerner. I thought I knew music. You got cut time, you got waltz time, you got 4/4 time. You got major and you got minor, you got modes, meter and modes. As I couldn't see any of that in Indian music. Indian music sounds just like jumble to me. But then I studied it. I took an ethnomusicology class at the UW, and I gained an appreciation. Even if I don't like it, it's just as sophisticated as our classical music. And that culture is adept at that, and our culture is adept at Mozart and Beethoven. Wow. Now, is that true, or am I just being romantic? Well, I'm not sure, to be honest. But I want to err on the side of appreciating how unable I am to properly get another culture. I want to be humble about that, because too many people are condemning Hindus for feeding their cows better than their children without knowing why do they do that. Why do Hindus take better care of their cows than their children? Could it be they live in a land with no trees and cow pies are the only source of fuel? And without cow pies dried, they don't have anything to cook with and nourish their children. Do they have to work into their values and appreciation of cows so that they have cows around so they have fuel? I mean, I don't know, but these are thoughtful things, and we should aspire to cut other cultures some slack and enjoy the wonder of realizing we are not the norm. People who sit on toilets are not the norm. We're the oddballs on this planet. Most people sit on their haunches. They don't know what a toilet is. I was on an airplane in India, and there was a decal in the bathroom that explained with a stick figure how to use the toilet. Don't stand on it and squat over it. You actually put your butt on that round circle. Because the person who's never seen that would put his feet on that and squat over it, because for them, that's more hygienic. Huh. I thought we were the norm who sit on toilets when we're the oddballs. In Afghanistan, on this trip, a man sat down in Kabul. I tell the story all the time when I give my lectures. He said, "Are you an American?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I'm a professor in Afghanistan, and I want you to know that a third of the people on this planet eat with spoon and fork like you do. A third of the people eat with chopsticks, and a third of the people eat with their fingers like I do, and we're all civilized just the same." We're all civilized just the same. As a 23-year-old twerp, I heard that. I remember it today as if it was told to me this morning. We're all civilized just the same. And that stuck with me. Wow. I thought he has a chip on his shoulder, but he was right. I thought less of him because he ate with his fingers. And I remember getting good at eating with my fingers on the rest of that trip. It became natural. It's a beautiful thing. We Americans need to make a point to learn about our home by leaving it and looking at it from a distance, and at the same time gain a better appreciation for the rest of the world. That oh, is a souvenir from a trip like this. And what's interesting, when I read through this book, when I think about me, before I was anything more than a piano teacher who every night scrawled pages in here, that's the lesson I was hungry for. And when we travel, we lap that up and we make our travels more valuable. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. Look at this man. Look at these wonderful women. Wow. Huh. Elephants. This is not a tourist attraction. This is that's how they get their goods around, you know. Of course, for a few bucks, they'll let a tourist hop on the elephant. I wrote about it in the book. I was in such a good mood on this elephant that I forgot that my legs were hanging down over the side. And the elephant came into the concrete pier to let me off. And a split second before his 5-ton hide hit the concrete and would crush anything in between it, like my legs, I realized, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose both my legs. And I had to pull my legs up and then bang. Oh God, that would have been awful. It would have been the end of the trip. But that was a great experience to ride that elephant on that monsoon rainstorm. We spent a lot of time realizing that Indian rickshaws are not designed to accommodate the hip width of two Americans. We were about 10% too wide, the two of us sitting together on the rickshaw. But it was a good way to get around. And we got to make friends with a lot of rickshaw drivers, like Baba. And then we got to Varanasi, the holy Ganges River. Intensity. I don't teach India. You'll notice I don't write about India. I don't take tours to India. It's just too personal. It doesn't seem right to teach people how to do India. I know that I'm maybe it's just an excuse or whatever, but it's just too special. It's too fragrant. It's too individualized. It's too mind-blowing to sit down and teach in a formal way like I like to teach Spain, Denmark, Ireland. Wow. But to be there at the crack of dawn, literally at the crack of dawn, in a boat, watching people who've hiked for weeks to get to this spot and appreciate the holy water of the Ganges River and not understand it. And be happy you don't understand it. But don't think less of them because you don't get it. And of course, this is where people go to die. It's the greatest blessing to die in Varanasi after the ritual of being in the water of the Ganges, and then your body is burned. And it's a good thing if you're Hindu. So I was struggling with me being privileged and having a lot of money and desperate poverty. I remember in India, I was fascinated by how I started to understand India not on per capita joy, but on cumulative joy. Joy per capita, India is struggling. But if you think of just the bulk joy on that subcontinent, it's mind-blowing. And then you've got the caste system, and you've got desperate poverty. You've even got a caste of people who are born to be beggars, whose parents mutilate them so they'll be more effective beggars. And you see them unable to walk, mutilated, scooting their begging tins down the muddy street with parrots perched on their bent limbs. That's something you can write about. That's something you can never unsee. It's something you can try to wrestle with. And marijuana, hash. It's an herb. It's a holy herb. I didn't understand it. I wasn't advocate, as maybe you know now. I'm on the board of NORML, and I work very hard to legalize marijuana so we don't lock up people who are responsible adult users of marijuana. But the first time I ever smoked marijuana was on this trip in Afghanistan, and it took me a while to get high. And it was kind of funny for me to kind of, am I high, or do those light bulbs really breathe? You know, am I high, or do these leeches coordinate their attack on my bloody feet? There was all sorts of interesting moments, and when I read back on it, I can't tell when I was high and when I wasn't. It's kind of fun, but there's some great moments on this trip, thanks to ganja. Ever since, long before marijuana was legal, we always had our staff, when we had our staff listing on our website, what's your favorite gelato flavor? Pistachio, chocolate, whatever. Mine was ganja, the Indian word for freedom. This was monsoon time, and monsoon was crazy. We never saw the mountains, barely saw the mountains. We saw a lot of floods. Oh, I want to read you something from the journal. Because we had so many opportunities to get into these little villages and have remarkable experiences. We were in the big city of Delhi, and we wanted to have another dose of that. So we went on a bus to the middle of nowhere. And here's just a little bit I wrote. We wanted a more rural experience, an extra blast of the kind of raw hippie trail adventure we've experienced so many times in the last month. Our goal, to check out an Indian village, a village that had never seen a Westerner in person, a place unmentioned in any traveler's guidebook. We rickshawed to the edge of town and waved down a bus. It was crowded, but like a box of cornflake settles, we eventually worked our way inside. At a charming, if dusty hamlet, we jumped off. And that's where we found a village. It's not that tough. You just go to a village that's never seen an American, that's barely on the map. And there you get a shave. You make friends and they take you inside, and you sit on the sofa, and you got a hole in your sock, and they take it off and they darn it for you. You've got all sorts of opportunities to connect in an intimate way with people who every day carry hay down the street. And you have an opportunity to say whatever you say, I don't know, merhaba, and namaste, I guess namaste, and put that bushel of hay on your head and take a load off their head, and then walk for a while with it. They still remember that. I still remember that. We connected in a fun way. And that was something fun to write about. Lots of smiles in India. Then we crossed the border into Nepal. And Nepal was the highlight of the trip, really. And we came in through the back door, believe it or not. We decided to go through a border town called Butwal, and our first overnight was in Tansen. And our hotel was Siddhartha. It's a hotel for the homely. Please get here. I just love the way they would use their broken English, and signs all the time were just entertaining. And we settled into Pokhara. It's the main city in western Nepal before you get to Kathmandu. And I bought that hat. And it's one of those hats that you think, will I wear that at home? Probably not. I've never worn it outside of when I'm in my little house here. But I do like to pick up hats. I was just getting that up. And then, like, here's my Romanian hat. If you've been to Romania, you know this hat. And these are the two, for me, funniest looking hats I've found in my travels. And I don't know which one's funnier. But in Nepal, I wore it well. At least what these girls let me know. Ha! Nepal. Hey, you got your drums. You know, souvenirs. I don't buy any souvenirs these days. But when I hear that, when I hear that sound, I'm right with that guy. It's a souvenir. 40 years old. Ha! These are fun. Oh, my knife. You know, a lot of people buy a Swiss Army knife. They don't mess around in Nepal. This is a Gurkha knife. And try getting that on an airplane today. Somehow, I love this thing. I got that onto the plane, taking it home. Beautiful leather. Oh, geez. And that's the treasure. It's a treasured souvenir. Wow. Humanity. Nature. Leeches. I don't have time to read about the leech wars we had, but it's all in the book. And then from Pokhara, a couple times a day, they'd clear the cows out of the field. You'd sit under what they call the people tree. It's the waiting room at the airport. The airplane, twin propeller driven airplane would land. 12 or 14 people would get on, and you'd fly to Kathmandu. Kathmandu, the end of the rainbow for the hippie traveler. We bought a room, rented a room right on the main square, Durbar Square. It was so cool. My goodness, I'd love to go back. This is where there's a place called Freak Street, and this was really the Shangri-La for the hippies. When they weared out their visa, they'd have to go to Goa. It would be an independent part of Goa, and then they'd go back in and they'd have a new visa so they could stay a lot longer. We were not that kind of a hippie travelers. We knew we had to get home to go to school or go to work or whatever. But a lot of these people had just checked out. You know, they were done with the West. This was their new reality. But it was fun to get to know the hippies there and connect with the locals in Nepal. Can you imagine walking down the street and seeing images like this every few steps? And you're not even high. Imagine doing it high. I mean, it sounds kind of trite or silly, but it was a trip. It was a trip. Look at that beautiful mother and child. This guy, he kind of haunts me. I look at him and I think, he looks like an American, a guy from California that just checked out and grew his beard. He doesn't have hoofs on his feet yet, you know. But there's a lot of people like that, expats. When you go to India and Nepal, you find a lot of erotic art in the temples. And we hiked up to the temple with those beautiful eyes looking out over the valley. And this is the domain of monkeys. And these monkeys love glasses. They love anything you're munching on. They can terrorize a tourist. All through the trip, my comfort food was English digestive biscuits. I still love my digestive biscuits. You could buy them in little packets. And there was something comforting about something you knew was not going to make you sick. My friend Jean was sick most of the trip. They say on the hippie trail, there's two kinds of travelers, those who know they have worms and those who don't know they have worms. I loved my digestives. The monkey saw my digestives and he wanted them. I threw the digestive nervously at him because I didn't want to get rabies. If you get bit by a monkey or scratched by a monkey, then you got to decide are you going to get rabies shots, and that's no fun, especially in Nepal. He took my biscuit and then he came back and he wanted the whole package. My beloved biscuits. And he got it. Right there with his corn on the cob. He's got my biscuits. I never got over it. The one time we had an appointment in this whole Nepal experience for a concert of tourist music concert or whatever, folk show, folk dance. It was Yak and Yeti. That was the hotel, and it was a Nepali folk music thing. It was a hoot. It was really nice. But all day long, I was burdened with knowing I had to be somewhere at a certain time. And I remember because I know what time it is whether I look at my watch or not. I'm always aware of that. I'm just kind of a sad case of a workaholic Westerner. But on that trip, I wore no watch. And on that day, I had to remember I had to be somewhere to see that concert. And it was a real burden. It was a real adjustment. I love the children. Namaste. I salute your virtues. I salute your virtues. And I pray for your country and this world. And that the United States can be a country that we're proud of as part of the family of nations, knowing what an impact we have on the other 96% of humanity. We're stepping into a 4-year period now where it's the other 96% of humanity can go to hell because we want to be richer. That's what it's all about, and America votes for that. It's just a hard truth. If everybody could go to Nepal and put your hands together with 4 kids like this and say namaste, and then come home and remember that when they go into the voting booth, I think this world would be a better place. And in the long term, it would be a safer reality for our country. So we went home. We flew back to India, or to Frankfurt, and then to Seattle. And I don't think I became a guru, but I was impacted, and I got back into the regimentation of my normal life. And I had my journal, and this was a turning point in my life. And as it says on the last sentence of the book, I penned 60,000 words on the hippie trail, then flew home and dove into adulthood. In the wake of this adventure, having stoked my travel spirit, I made a decision that changed the trajectory of my life. I let my piano students go, turned my recital hall into a lecture hall, and began a small travel business. Keep on traveling, Rick Steves. I'm thankful for that trip, and I'm thankful to be able to share it with all of you. Hey, Ben, I think it's time to be done with the slideshow and time to answer some questions. And I understand you've got a book to give away.
I do, Rick. Thank you. The winner of tonight's giveaway, drum roll, drum roll, drum roll. Lisa from San Ramon. So Lisa, we'll be in touch with you to coordinate the details. Congratulations.
Nice. Hey, what do you have some questions, Ben?
Yeah, do you have a word from our sponsor for us, Rick?
Well, the word from our sponsor is if you'd like to read On the Hippie Trail. When I started an hour and 20 minutes ago or whatever, I didn't know what I was going to say. I looked through the slides and I thought, well, I hope I've got something to say. But it's the kind of a well you can dip into. Looking at these slides, you can ladle up stuff, and it's just a rich travel experience. And I'm really so thankful that I had the weird inclination to write it all up, and then that we were able to publish it thanks to my publisher Avalon, and that I took photographs along the way. I mean, you got the guy skinning the goat. These are all real photographs from this trip, and it's quite an experience. And a lot of people say, I wish we could do that now. Well, you can't go from Istanbul to Kathmandu and go to Payan Chai and over Khyber Pass like I did. I mean, you could try, but it's different now. But the impact of that trip on me can be had by curious travelers ready to do their own hippie trail today. And I'm inspired by that, by people on our staff. We have 100 great travelers at Rick Steves Europe, and we've had people on our staff that take off for several months, and they do things their parents are a little bit nervous about, and they come home glad they did. You know who I'm thinking about. Uh,
A few of
uh,
us, yes.
and you can have this kind of trip. You can do a Che Guevara thing around South America. You can do any number of things. You can hitchhike across the United States. It's not the safest thing, but when people tell me have a safe trip, sometimes I think they're saying, be careful you don't mess up your self-assuredness, because then your life gets a little more complicated. And when you travel this way, you become humble, you become broader minded, you become a person with a global perspective. And that gives you an edge, I think, in having a meaningful life that you really contribute. So I guess a long-winded way to say a word from our sponsor would be get this book, man. You can get this book where you can pre-order it. It's not quite out yet, but people are taking uh, orders all over the country in bookstores. And we'll have a link, won't we, Ben, for people who want to do that. And otherwise, if you're curious about any of the travels we've coming up, we're just kicking off tonight. This is the first week of our annual travel festival. And whether you're a do-it-yourself traveler or whether you want to take a Rick Steves tour, we got some great travels for you. And it's so nice to be here with everybody. And let's have a few questions, Ben.
Rick. Well, that enlightening, powerful, beautiful presentation, Rick, thank you so much. It's remarkable that you've kept the memories alive after so many years. It's an inspiration. And on that note, a few of our fellow travelers were curious if you have any suggestions on how to write and maintain a travel journal.
First of all, don't do it on a steno pad. You know those little spiral things that are just designed to be thrown away? Invest in a serious empty book. And every year, I've got 7 of these, I think, for 7 years, each one with 60,000 words in it. Each one starts with a little sense of where am I now and what do I hope to get out of this trip? And then each one finishes with an assessment of what I learned and how I've been inspired by this trip. And then you have all the days you did, and you have all the memories, and in the back you've got all the people you met, and you've got how much your hotel cost, how much the bus cost, all that kind of stuff. This is the beautiful. I was thinking with this tragic fire in LA, what would I do if my house was going to be burned down in an hour? I think I might just grab my journals because those are part of me. So get an empty book and allocate your pages right. 10 days before the end of the trip, I realized, oh boy, I'm running out of pages. So all of a sudden I crank down the font and it goes from 10 points to 8 points, Look, a lot of my journals, it just finishes on the right amount, but I had to calibrate it at the end. But that's time really well spent. And when we were taking our kids to Europe, we took our kids to Europe every year. And part of their, they got, spending money on the trip. And part of it was you need to write a journal to be able to have this fun money for the trip. And those kids wrote a journal, and I think it's really a good exercise.
That is a fantastic idea. I've been inspired by you, Rick, and I try. I don't know if it's just that I don't have the attention span. Well, it is within me, but I normally write for a week and then I stop. So I'm gonna keep at this.
I don't know why it works that way, but I think I'm a little odd that way, but you don't need to do anything as involved as I do. And it doesn't need to be a daily log either. What I like to do is I carry a little Moleskine book, the little black book. It's in your pocket. And then when something great happens, you write it down. I just love, just a thought that happens. You write it down and then you collect those together and you weave them into something. And pretty soon you're a travel writer.
Okay, Rick, from Emily. Traveling with someone for a significant period can test your bond. How did you and Jean handle the ups and downs and extensive time together? And do you have any advice on this for other travelers?
Very important. Good question. I don't care how good you are together, it's not normal to spend every waking hour together. And you need an explicit understanding from the start that there's nothing rude or insulting or whatever or selfish about saying, there's going to be times when I just need my time. And I don't want to be apologetic about it. And I hope you're the same way. And then don't go through your trip. I was going to do a 3-legged race. In a 3-legged race, that's a horrible thing. You got to cut loose. And one person wants to, go down to the river and write a poem. The other person wants to take a photo safari in the market. And another person might just want to hang out at the poolside and read their book. You have to have an explicit understanding that you give each other permission to, whenever you want to be on your own, to be on your own, no apologies needed. And then you enjoy your time together. That's fundamental. That's fundamental. Um, and even then, it's a scary thing to lash yourself to the wrong person for a great trip. And I have not always had the right travel partner, and I've learned how it's an important decision. But I would rather, the loneliest people are the people with the wrong person. I'd rather be alone than with the wrong person on the road. But the happiest people are not, I think, are the people with a good travel partner. It's a real blessing.
Very true. And that communication early on is so important. Yeah.
Oh, baby.
Okay. Robin is curious, what place from this trip would you most like to visit again?
Well, I'd like to be 23 years old, listening to The Doors, eating fresh apple pie out of the oven, smoking pot at a place called Pie and Chai in Kathmandu, with a bunch of free spirits from all over the world sharing it with me. That was, when I think of the happiest moments in my life, something about that was just so great. If I wanted a vacation, that would be great. Kashmir also, being up on those lakes, with the houseboats, that was gorgeous. Um, it would either be Kashmir or Nepal that I would like to go back to. I'm going back to Istanbul in just a few weeks, so that's well within my realm. But my commitment to Rick Steves Europe doesn't give me the freedom to go to these kind of places because I really have so much work I want to do for our mission to help Americans travel in Europe. But we're going to be going to Istanbul, and I've had a long-standing love affair with Istanbul, and we're going to be making a 1-hour TV special in a couple of months, and that'll be airing all over the country by the end of the year.
Few of our travelers have asked about women on the hippie trail, Rick. Were there many female travelers, do you recall?
Yeah, there are a lot of women travelers all over the Lonely Planet world. And I'm not one to ask because I'm a man and I'm privileged, and I can't really put myself in the body of a woman. But I have spent years talking to women travelers who have done this and done it well. There's certain obvious common sense safeguards you do that you can't do if you're a woman that men can get away with doing. But I have met so many inspirational women travelers, and I've met a lot of women travelers who have a career out of inspiring other women to travel in an independent way. Is it the safest thing in the world? Probably not. Is it reckless? Probably not. Is it something you'd be comfortable doing? I don't know. But I have met plenty of women who I look at and far away from the mainstream, and I'm going, there's a great traveler. She's got the world by the tail. She's not reckless. She's cool. She's got it. So it can be done, but it's more challenging to do it safely for a woman than a man. And I think the ideal thing is for a man and a woman together to do that.
We have several questions on planning and budgeting. How much did you spend on this trip? Do you recall, Rick? And was there a lot of advanced planning? How did your parents feel about this?
Ah, my parents didn't feel good about it at all. Well, no, they felt fine about it. They just wanted me to send postcards home. So if I disappeared, they'd know where to find me. So I sent postcards every other day. I made them pay for the postcards. But if you want to know what it cost, I'm going to read you the cost for the double room in places. $2.40, $2.80, $6, $3, $5, $3, $1, $6.50, $4. The most expensive hotel room of the whole trip was in Pokhara in Nepal, $11 for the double. The YMCA in Delhi, that's a big expensive city, so we stayed at the Y, $8 for the double. A 12-hour train ride from across Pakistan, $3.50. Going over Khyber Pass, Kabul to Peshawar, 8 hours on a bus, $2.50. 3 days on the bus from Istanbul to Tehran, $32. Wow. So that gives you a sense of how expensive it was. The biggest expense for us was the flight back from a one-way ticket from India to Europe. And I didn't know what we would do or how we would do it. But everybody knew back then that you go to a bucket shop and you find a flight that'll take you home. And we did. We didn't know if it was for real or not. You know, it could have been a con artist, but it worked. But the point is, it's so silly cheap, you just can't believe it. Even if you're an impoverished vagabond like we were, you know, let's get a nicer hotel. We'll spend $5 a night for the double. Of
And
course, today it's much, much more expensive, but it's still remarkably cheap compared to Europe.
and I think it's a reminder that sometimes spending more, as you say, Rick, only gets you further away from the culture you wanted to go see.
Absolutely. There's it's sort of an arc almost. You got to get out of the squalor so you're safe and stay healthy. But you don't want to get so healthy that you deny yourself all the serendipity and the magic, and you surround yourself just with other Americans. So there's that sweet spot where it's safe and comfortable, but it's not disgustingly Western, if you want to have that good experience. I've never thought about that before. You can almost graph it.
I think for our recommendations for Europe, we do such a good job with accommodations and finding that spot.
That
Yeah.
is the sweet spot. You got it.
Okay, Rick, I will ask you one more question from John. What thoughts and feelings, Rick, go through your head when you look back on this trip and realize that many of the places you visited are not possible to visit or recommended to visit today? What does this say about global prosperity and democracy, and how do you stay positive about the way the world is today?
Yeah. One of my takeaways is the potential, if people weren't so greedy on this planet. There's enough for everybody to be comfortable, easy. There's enough for everybody to be comfortable without screwing up the environment and without working yourself into an early grave. But because there is all of this aggressiveness and corruption and conflict, we have this unfortunate situation where there's a lot of poverty in a world that is overflowing with wealth. What is we're going to be ruled by oligarchs apparently in the next few years. Let's say these guys are worth $50 billion or who knows what. Why, if you own $50 billion, would you do anything that was greedy and selfish against other people who are needy, when that's not going to bring you any more joy? When you could use your money and do something that would help people. I mean, maybe they are trying to help people in a way that I don't understand, but I don't even think they're making that case. These oligarchs are just saying, hey, this is a game, I want more. It's not a game. There's consequences. And when you travel, you spend a lot of time thinking about what is sustainable and what would make this world more stable. When people are afraid of immigrants and when they are opposed to dealing with climate change, they do not understand that the future is going to be characterized by mass immigration, by desperate people fleeing climate change. If you are one of these people that hate immigrants, then you better get serious about reining in climate change, I think, because you don't know what immigration problems are. You don't know what migrants' problem climbing over your border is, because it hasn't even started yet. Wait until what's going on in Los Angeles is happening all over. Wait until what's violent weather and desperation and starvation caused by farms that can't grow their corn anymore south of the border. And it saddens me because when you can't, I was in Guatemala and Ethiopia making a TV show 7 years ago. And we were on the cusp of, there was really hope that we could overcome hunger, not make everybody rich, but overcome hunger, extreme poverty. And famine would only be used as a military tool. That was the only reason you would have famine going forward. That was the understanding. And the only thing that can derail that progress is conflict. And conflict is derailing that progress. And we have conflict today, and I don't know, there's no easy answers. If some politician tells you, I got an easy answer, I'll fix it tomorrow, you be careful. You be careful, because that's danger right there. It's a complicated thing. And I just have this deep-seated feeling that in the future we need to not have win-lose solutions. We need to have win-win solutions, or the win-lose is just going to be a temporary putting off a reality. We need to have win-win solutions, and there's enough money for there to be plenty of win-win solutions. But you don't get elected talking that kind of common sense, apparently. Hey, that was a good last question. I really enjoyed those questions. By the way, I read all the questions, don't I, Ben? Afterwards, you send me my nighttime reading.
You certainly do. And there's quite a few, 500 or more, I think, for you later.
That's my favorite thing because I'm so thankful that everybody's joining us, sharing a little bit of time with us. You let me dredge up some old trip and share it with you, and you call it good entertainment. Well, all I got to say is happy travels. We are here, we love to travel, and we'd love to be your travel partner in any way that works for you. So thanks, Ben. Thanks to all the gang at Monday Night Travel. And we'll look forward to seeing people every night for the next 6 or 8 nights. And then I'll be around to wrap it up at the very end. Back to you, Ben.
Hey, thanks so much, Rick. Good night, everyone. We look forward to seeing you and welcoming you back tomorrow night. Good night, Rick.
Wow, that was fun, Ben. Good night. Good night, Wendy. Good night, Rich.
Sorry. Good
Good night,
night.
Rich.
Good night. That was wonderful. I hope that I answered as many questions as I could.